Ooh-wee. Oh, that smells like blackberry.
Yeah, I love the smell of blackberry.
Because I'm drinking a blackberry honey kolsch from Rogue Brewing Co.
Oh, that's fun. I'm drinking Hot Tub Jamboree.
Oh, God.
From Revision. I'll show you a little picture here.
Does it taste... Oh, Jesus, that guy looks happy.
Yeah. You ever been at a jamboree, Britton? Huh?
Yeah, especially in a hot tub. Does that probably taste like hot tub water, just so you know? With a little bit of juice in there. How is it, buddy?
Extra juicy.
Mm-hmm. Extra frothy.
It's actually
hot tub.
It's pretty good, man. I like it.
Ooh, that's really good. The blackberry honey kolsch.
So I decided to go see a movie. It was a couple weeks ago. I forgot to bring it up on my last podcast, our podcast, and
on my last podcast, because I have many podcasts. And the last
I have
one
many.
I didn't bring it up on.
Watched Alien Romulus, and
you lucky bastard.
I went in there with low expectations because I hate to say it. I didn't like the first two. I don't know what you would call them, prequels. Where they went. Yeah, Prometheus, and then there was that other one. Like, I literally have no memory of the one after that, but I know I watched it. It was just so bad. I don't remember any details because nothing was memorable.
Yeah, you just blocked it out of your mind.
Like, I recall, like, I remember, like, I guess, like, a lady blew up their own ship because she was an idiot or something. I don't know. But anyways, I was watching Romulus, and I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was great. I think they went back to their roots of sci-fi horror, and I think it was good. There was a bit of funny, and there was good character development. I really enjoyed it. It's one of the better films that I've seen in a very long time. I would say I wish Evil Dead did something as good as this to their own little genre versus their little...
It's so funny that you mentioned that because the director is the exact same fucking person, buddy.
No, dude, Bruce Banner had a lot to do with that Evil Dead film. Or are you talking about the same director from Prometheus?
It's Fede Alvarez. He did Alien Romulus and Evil Dead. Google it, buddy.
Okay. Well, I don't care. I mean, I still didn't like Evil Dead. It was still horrible, and he did a horrible job at it. But what I'm saying here is Romulus was a great rendition of the original Alien films. I would rank it just under Aliens. And Aliens is a classic, and then you have Alien, which is just a smidge under it. They're cultural masterpieces. I would put this right under Aliens. I liked it a lot. I enjoyed it. The only film that I'm itching to see when it comes to the Alien franchise is from the comics where a queen lands on the Earth and it takes over the Earth. I'd love to see a giant war against man and aliens and that they die. But I probably won't get that. And this was pretty good. I would recommend that our viewers watch it.
That would be good. But so I do have to say that he did Alien Romulus, but he did the original remake of Evil Dead, not the newest one, but the first remake.
Yeah, that was good. You
liked that one, right?
So fuck you, man, because I thought you were talking about the shitty one that you keep defending for whatever reason because it's ass. It's literally trash, grade A ass. I would literally, I literally wanted to put bleach in my eyes after I watched it. I literally wanted to leave middle of the movie, and my wife wouldn't let me. I hated that film. It was a miscarriage of what the franchise is all about. It is so bad that I literally wanted to hit myself when I left the theater.
I wish you would have. Did you watch the movie Don't Breathe? Where they break into that blind guy's house and he turns out to be a fucking badass.
I saw the preview.
He did that one too. That one was actually pretty good. I'll say that was pretty good. But anyway, I'm glad you liked Alien Romulus. I really want to check it out. But I also wanted to talk about since we did our last episode, we went to Phenomicon. Yeah. What was your take on Phenomicon?
Yeah, so we went into my car and we drove 4 hours to northern Utah. I think it was in Vernal, right? And we didn't know exactly what we were getting ourselves into, but I would say it was more along the lines of just people from famous shows with the paranormal speaking, right?
Skinwalker Ranch. We heard Drogon talk. dragon talk. We heard dragon talk.
I heard there was like a rumor about his personal life, but I don't quite recall what it was. But I hear it's really, I don't know. I just heard a weird rumor, but I don't remember what it was. Anyways, yeah, so there was like some Bigfoot show that we've never watched that I wasn't really into. The guy seemed like a douchebag that was up on the stage.
His name is Russell Accord.
He was talking about how he was yelling at a cameraman for a situation that seemed to be completely his fault, but I don't know. I digress. I don't watch the show. But yeah, we were seeing the Skinwalker Ranch crew, which was really neat. I was really happy to see David Pilates. I actually bought one of his books and asked him to be on the... I asked him to be on the podcast, but we don't have enough subs apparently. And who was it? George Knapp? No, was it
George Knapp? Yes.
It was George Knapp.
Yeah, it was funny because Cleet went to buy a book. Well, before that, me and Cleet were we went to the neighborhood brewery, which was delicious, by the way, and we got back just in time for the Skinwalker Ranch panel to start, and so Cleet and I were like, we didn't get a seat because it was fucking booked. Like what, 5,000 people? Would you say, give or take? If
yeah, it was packed. No seats.
So we were standing in the back, and I turn around to look, and no shit, David Pilates is just standing behind us. Like, we're in his little roped-off section, and he's just sitting behind us. I was like, hey, that's David Pilates. So after, Cleet went and bought a book from him and, just happened to say, hey, we run a podcast. And I think he said, like, you small bitches ask me to be in podcasts, like, 5 times a week. Like, you're not big enough or cool enough, so come back when you're better.
They called me a pussy-ass bitch.
We did. So we, if you want to help us grow and get better, fucking subscribe. Yeah, exactly. He said that he knows where they all are, and it's in his basement. But it's funny. I have to say that when we were at the brewery, I have one of my all-time favorite memories now that I created because I taught Cleet a new term, and it just happened to be the funniest. I don't know. We both got some poutine, and I don't know how it started, but I just somehow looked at Cleet and I said something about I said something about beef curtains, and Cleet just screams beef curtains because he can't believe that I said that. He doesn't know what it is, and the guy next to him, complete stranger, just looks at Cleet like, "Did you just say beef curtains?" It was hilarious.
Yeah, that happened. So if you guys know what beef curtains are, send some pics in the comments. Yeah, so, beef curtains. Something new.
Yeah. And Phenomicon was great.
All right. We jumping into the stories?
So, what are we talking about then?
Well, tonight we are going to be doing scary stories from the internet, specifically ghost stories. This one is called My Husband Died in 2020. After he died, I found a series of very unpleasant things about him. It was devastating. It took me more than 3 years to come to grips. He died in August of 2020 and sold our condo in June of 2021. He had renovated the entire condo, kitchen, both bathrooms, flooring, trim, doors, everything. It nearly took 3 years. I have 2 small dogs, and when the realtor told me someone was coming to see the property, I took the dogs, locked the door, and went outside. The realtor told me to be out for about 30 minutes. After that period of time, I went back upstairs. The door was locked. I entered, and when I did, it looked as if people had been there. Doors were moved, the laundry doors were wide open. I had closed them. They were barn doors. I then got a text from the realtor asking me why I didn't put the key in the lockbox on the main floor outside. The people couldn't get in with the realtor. I'll be honest, I was in a very bad place after he died, particularly after what I found, and thinking in detail was not something I was doing. I went to the main washroom and saw that the bath mat had been sitting over the tub, not the way I had left it. I touched it and felt water, almost like someone got out of the shower and had been standing on it. It was a fairly big apartment, 2 bedrooms and an office. When the dogs and I were in the bed at night, I could hear noises in the kitchen after he died at night. What? After he died at night? I'm not sure what that sentence means. I was too afraid to get out of bed. It was a concrete building, and we couldn't hear anything people were doing in the apartments near us, so hearing something was very unusual. I moved in June of 2021 to a new condo. The first night there, I was alone. The dogs were being taken care of. I was laying in bed, not asleep, laying on my side at the edge. I felt someone brush past me. My hair actually moved. It scared the hell out of me. I lay there for a few minutes afraid to move. Finally, I moved again, recently, far from where I had been living. Last Christmas Eve, I was in bed. My bedroom door was open, and I clearly heard 3 knocks on the door. It happened twice. This also really scared me. I've never been one to think of the spirit world until recently. Last Christmas, I made statements out loud and told him to leave me alone. So far, all's been good. The last 4 years have been a real ride. So there is a lot going on here. Like, what did she find out after his death? I guess they posted another, link. But it's weird she didn't go over it in the story. But I guess the husband was haunting her and following her around ever since. So, spooky stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't like stories like that just don't explain.
Yeah, ever since I found out that horrible thing he did.
All right, well, I'll move on to mine then. This comes from Lonely Dahlia, and it's called I Had Surgery Go a Little Sideways, and Now I See Dead People. Was this the Sixth Sense? Have to tell somebody because I'm shook. They're shook. I had surgery a month ago, and ever since I woke up from surgery, I can see dead people as shadows. They're just around. It's so far only my family, but it's them. I see them. I've been battling an infection. I just keep thinking, okay, well, it's going to pass. It's probably just me being sick. But I called my mom to tell her that my aunt, who passed away a few weeks ago, came to me last night, and I heard her whisper, psst, psst, and then giggle. Wake up. It was bizarre. She was just happy as could be and wanted to share and play with me. She showed me that she could hug her parents again. They were all so happy. She showed me herself standing in the kitchen behind my parents, smiling and putting her hand on them. She wanted me to see that she was at peace, and she seemed really, really entertained, which was unexpected. My mom gasped. Apparently, before my aunt fell ill, she told her that Mom and I sometimes get visited in our dreams by family to warn us of danger, or that somebody passed, and my aunt said she was jealous. When she died, she'd have to come mess with us. On top of that, something you would do for sure. I'm just going to go fuck with my family when I die.
If I die, I'm going to fuck with you.
On top of that, I was telling Mom how serious and real this is. That, of course, here and there we had stuff happen, but I've never been more sure in my life that this is real. That I can really see people that have passed, and I went from being freaked to making peace with it. But one thing I can't figure out is there's a 5-year-old girl that stands beside my bed most days. That I wake up constantly in the middle of the night thinking it's one of my kids asking to get in my bed, but it's not, as I don't have a 5-year-old girl. She loves to play her music box for me. I told her, the only little girl I know that passed is Dad's sister, but she was like 2 or 3. She said, I think she was 5. I said, no, she was 2 or 3. Go ask Dad. I'm 90% sure she was 2 or 3. She goes to ask my dad how old his sister was when she died, and he says she was 5. I was in absolute shock. I asked him if she had a music box, and he said, I don't know. I'll have to ask my brother, but she loved music and to sing. How come? I spent a month telling my husband I don't know a 5-year-old girl, so I don't know who she could be, but apparently I was wrong. She's been my Aunt Sophie all along, which totally makes sense because I've always felt my granddad nearby, and she was his baby girl that passed. Spooky.
Damn.
I want to know what surgery it was that made her see dead people.
Probably penis enlargement.
Probably. There's that movie, it's like, The Eye with Jessica Alba, where they, give her new eyes and she can see dead people too.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So bad. Did you really like it?
I've never seen it.
Oh, I was like, if you like that one, then that explains a lot.
One of the best scary movies ever written. First of all, I have better taste than you in movies. I'm going to say that right now.
Oh, sure.
All right, this one is called Seen Ghosts of People Who Were Autopsied.
Oh.
This was posted in a primary healthcare center with a fellow senior doctor. It was her late night shift, and he started to tell me stories of this time when he was doing autopsies in the same hospital. He was shifted to PHC later because he couldn't deal with the trauma that came later. He said that not all autopsies led to a haunting, but it was people who had killed themselves or cases of rape/assault that were the cause of death was unnatural. It were these cases that led some of the most disturbing paranormal activities. One such case, he narrated that night, was a woman, mid-20s, who was first raped, then strangulated, and later her body was thrown into the well by her in-laws. Such incidents are common in rural areas of India. They hoped to escape the charges, but after thorough examination of her lungs by my colleague, a senior doctor, who did her autopsy, it was obvious that she was killed first and drowned later. Then, the in-laws of this woman tried to pay a hefty amount to him so as to escape the charges, but he refused. After the incident, he said that he often saw the woman, wet hair, bulging eyes, naked with white, pale body, often sitting by his bedside, just looking at him. He said it wasn't sleep paralysis. He was shattered when one time, as he was combing his hair in the bathroom mirror, and he saw that same woman just peeking at him through the door. Only her eyes and wet hair were visible through the mirror. It became so traumatic that he left that part of his profession completely, even though he was getting paid a lot for that job. He said he doesn't ever wish to go back, in the fact that it was the same hospital where I was working right now. Kinda creepy. Would you do that, Britton? Huh? Deal with dead bodies, even if they followed you home? See them in the mirror?
I don't know. Some of that stuff doesn't really bother me, but I don't know. All right. This comes from Actual Consequence 211. It's called Real Experiences I've Had While Working as a Nurse. In my mid-20s, I worked at a subacute rehab facility. Generally, these places exist to help those who are struggling after an accident, surgery, etc., regain their mobility and quality of life with the help of physical therapy and around-the-clock nursing care. I worked in the dementia unit. These patients were long-term, and most ended up living out the rest of their days there. Although it was called the dementia unit, our parents were comprised of those suffering from permanent or long-term brain-related conditions. These included dementia, Alzheimer's, comas, strokes, traumatic brain injuries, and brain tumors. These are the experiences I had while working there. 1. A disembodied hand. I had just clocked in for the evening and received report from the day shift nurse. I was standing at the end of the hallway with my back against the wall, reviewing the notes that I had taken from the prior nurse. Whilst reading over the slip of paper, I felt what could only be described as a hand dragging its fingers horizontally across my abdomen. I jerked back and looked around, but I was completely alone. Number 2. The Call Light Symphony. Although I do not have a particular story about call lights, it was a normal occurrence to have call lights in empty rooms triggered, even in rooms where the wires that were attached to call buttons were unplugged from the wall. Some nights the nurses would be forced to respond to several phantom calls from empty rooms. 3. The Empty Room Ghost. At the very end of one of our halls contained a habitually empty room. The heating and air conditioning unit was broken, so patients were never placed there. The nurses and aides would use that room for privacy during personal phone calls, to poop in peace or do whatever else required some seclusion. Gotta poop in peace, man.
I hate it when people interrupt my poops.
Yep. One evening, I headed into that room's bathroom to touch up my makeup and fix my hair. Drop a massive shit. Just kidding. I left the bathroom door slightly ajar while going about my business. I was putting my hair up in a bun when the bathroom door slammed shut behind me. Mid-heart attack, I spun around and jerked the door back open. The room was completely empty. The time it would have taken a human to exit the room would have been longer than what it took me to open the bathroom door. I'd also like to note that there was no furniture in the room, nothing a human could have hid behind. I'm convinced that it wasn't a living person who slammed that door. Number 4, the last farewell. One patient we had residing in the long-term unit was a middle-aged woman with severe Down syndrome. She was mostly nonverbal, save for a few words that she would utter randomly. She was very sweet and would always had a smile on her face. It was my turn to help her eat dinner that night. She didn't have the motor skills to eat properly, so I spoon-fed her while we caught up in cartoons on her TV set. But this particular night, she acted completely out of character. I didn't notice at first because I was engrossed in the show that we were watching. I failed to notice her attempts to get my attention. She finally resorted to using grunts to call me away from the TV screen. When I did finally notice, she seemed overjoyed with something. Her mouth was stretched into a wide grin, and she was pointing at an empty corner in the back of her room. I could clearly see the corner, but nothing else. I looked back and forth between her and the corner, but I couldn't understand what she was trying to communicate. She was pointing, giggling, and waving at apparently nothing in the corner. I tried asking her what she was trying to show me, simple yes or no questions she could nod or shake her head to. I became uneasy with her actions because I knew she was seeing something that I could not. After I finished up feeding her, I walked back out to the hallway and was immediately approached by a fellow nurse. My stomach sank, and I felt queasy while she told me the next-door neighbor of the woman I was just feeding had passed away during dinner time. God damn.
That's creepy stuff, man.
Number 5, the window watcher. My friend, let's call her Mary, not her real name, worked the night shift at the same rehab as I, but this story takes place years before I was hired there. Mary was close to one of her patients, and she went out of her way to make her feel special. The patient was an elderly woman with no living family and was chronically lonely. Let's call the patient Emily. When Mary bonded with Emily, it became a habit of Emily's to wait by her room's window, which faced the employee parking lot. So when she saw Mary walking up to the building, she could wave. This became a special occasion for Emily, and the two would wave to one another before and after Mary's shift while she traveled to and from the employee parking lot. Then Emily fell ill and was unable to get out of bed for a while. Every time Mary pulled up for work, she would check to see if Emily was waiting by the window. When she didn't see her, she would know, walking in, that Emily was still sick. This went on for a few weeks. Mary would pull into the parking lot, hoping to see her sweet patient up and out of bed, waiting patiently to wave to her. But then one day, Mary showed up at work and saw Emily standing at her window, peering out over the employee parking lot. Mary was thrilled, hopped out of her car to give Emily a gleeful wave. But Emily stood motionless, didn't react to Mary's exuberant greeting. Puzzled, Mary headed up into the building only to quickly find out that Emily had passed away earlier that day. What do you think? What do you think, Cleet? Do you believe those stories?
Yeah, why wouldn't I? You know, this is the internet. People are truthful. I really like the pointing in the top corner of the room. That kind of creeped me out.
Yeah, just like giggling too. It's like, what the fuck are you looking at?
Someone's dragging her to hell.
Jesus Christ.
This one is titled, My Friend Told Me a Story That Still Creeps Me Out 10 Years Later. When I was in high school, I had a group of friends I do everything with, especially my main friend, who, for the sake of the post, I'll call Brianna. During summer break, Brianna invited me to a sleepover at a friend's house, but my mom was the type who'd never let me go to sleepovers. And after what happened that night, I'm glad I didn't. When I talked to Brianna the next day, she told me something she can't explain. Brianna went to this friend's house with a couple of her friends to spend the night, and they all decided to sneak out for a bit. When they came back to this person's house, the mom had realized they left and was obviously pissed when they all got back. She was scolding them all and yelling, threatening to make everyone go home. At some point during the speech, they all say she started to change. The only way they could explain it to me was that she began to tilt her head back with her mouth open wide and some sort of liquid or water was pouring out of her face. Like onto her head, almost like she was drowning, but with no water around. They were all freaked out and ran to the room. Even the siblings went with them. They stayed up all night, and the next morning, the mom acted like nothing happened. Apparently, she had no idea what they were talking about. I have never heard a story like this. It just creeps me out to this day. Does anyone know or have an explanation of what they experienced that night? Sorry. Oh, yeah, it can be explained away.
Yeah, sure. That happens all the
I
fucking
fully
time.
believe them. They all shared the same story, and they genuinely didn't want to talk about it.
It's like, yeah, I have an explanation. You're not going to want to hear it. Your friends are full of shit, and they're teasing you because you missed out on the best sleepover of your fucking life.
So you got to hear it from me. You're the butt of the joke.
Yeah, I'd be sorry I missed out, too, because my mom just started spitting
She
pudding
just started
all over
aggressively eating pudding while she was yelling at us. That chocolate stuff. Just kept eating it and eating it. She didn't stop.
And she was cackling like nobody's business. All right, so this story, and I picked this one because it reminds me of Phenomenon, and you'll know why, Cleet. The title is, I Saw What I Saw, But I Don't Believe What I Saw.
I fucking hated that guy.
I think, so just for a little bit of context, obviously, they always opened up Q&A after the panels. And after the Skinwalker Ranch, well, no, was it?
It was the first one.
After the Bigfoot one, right? Yeah. So it was after the Bigfoot panel, and some guy walks up there, and I think he lived in Vernal. I think he was a Vernal local, because one of the guys who does the Bigfoot show also lives in Vernal. But anyway, the guy gets up to the mic, and he goes, I know that you know that I know.
Yeah. This is why the elites want to depopulate the earth. I swear to God, it was that guy.
Yeah. It was difficult to listen to. And he came up to the microphone every fucking panel. And he's like, I have pterodactyl stories that'll make you wet your pants.
I saw a giant worm out in the middle of nowhere. How about that, George Knapp?
That's right, giant worms, yep. So anyway, that's why I chose this story. But this comes from Kelly Sharp. Hi. This is my ridiculous story.
I should have stood up and just started packing my pants. I said that.
What the fuck?
Go ahead.
Jesus Christ. Hi, this is my ridiculous story. I'd like to first say that you don't have to feel bad if you don't believe me, because I struggle so much with believing it too. I wasn't alone. My best friend also saw it, and she struggles as much as I do with not believing what we saw. I'm almost 60 years old, and I'm a wildlife and landscape photographer from East Tennessee. I'm from Townsend, which is located in the Smoky Mountains, and I no longer live at the location where this happened, but I'm still close by. On the night of the new moon in July of 2018, my best friend, Deb, came over to my house around 11:30 p.m. because we were going to go up the hill from my house to an empty rental cabin to take pictures of the Milky Way over Rich Mountain. I know it was the night of the new moon because that's the best night of the month for night sky photography, since the moon won't wash out the light from the stars. If you stood on my road where you turn into my driveway, it actually looks like you're turning into the driveway off the rental cabin because we share the driveway. You turn into the rental and curve left down our long gravel driveway to the mobile home we lived in before we moved into our house, where we are now. Straight across the street from the rental cabin is what locals have always called the shale pit. It's just an empty lot, about an acre or two big. There's a family from Townsend who owns it, and they use it to dig up shale for new driveways of houses. That was their business. They built driveways, but their part was just to dig it and lay down the shale. They also let the national park bring trees there to use the space to burn them after they collected them when we'd have bad storms, strong winds, or heavy snow. There wasn't a house there or any other form of structure, just a big lot with a couple of backhoes for digging. They did put a small mobile home on the lot for the owner's grandson, but that didn't happen until 2020 during the pandemic. All right, here it goes. Deb and I had taken her car up the driveway to the rental cabin, and we parked right in front of the car. We parked right in the front, and her car was parallel to the road. The road was roughly 10 yards from the car, and the entrance to the shale pit was across the one-lane road we lived on, so about 10 more yards. That means 20 yards total from the car to the entrance of the shale pit. Jesus Christ, let's get on with this shit. We sat our tripods up and had each taken a couple of shots on the night sky when I heard what sounded like tires on gravel somewhere down the river. You have to cross a bridge over to the river to get to my old house and all houses on that road, the shale pit included, of course. I said out loud to her, "Someone is down at the river." I can't remember if she heard it. Just a few seconds later, we heard a loud truck that sounded like it was crossing the bridge and starting up my road. It might be a fourth of a mile from the bridge to my driveway, probably less. We could hear that the truck was going really slow, sounding like it was really old and barely running. As it got closer, I asked Deb if she had locked her car since we were on the back side of the cabin and I couldn't see it from there. She said she hadn't. Deb has thousands of dollars worth of camera gear and she had a lot of it with her that night. Without speaking, we both took our cameras off of our tripods and carried them to the tripods back to her car to lock it. I don't remember why we brought it all with us. I think we both just had a weird feeling about that truck. I know that I definitely did. I don't even know what to say other than it sounded like it was creeping around the area because it was going so slow. I could have walked as fast as that truck was going. When we got back to her car, we set our stuff in the back seat, right as the truck got to where it was, even with the cabin and us. It was a dark-colored truck, and it looked like it could have been maybe something like a Chevy S10 made back in the 70s or 80s. We couldn't see who was driving or how many people were in it. The truck stopped and turned into the driveway of the cabin, which means it was also turning onto my driveway. It only got 2 wheels onto the property when it stopped and backed up across the street to the entrance of the shale pit. Its lights were shining directly into our eyes. It just sat there with its loud, sad motor running. Deb asked me what the hell they were doing, and I said I don't know, but they're starting to piss me off because they know they're blinding us with their headlights. I waited about 10 seconds before I reached into my pocket and pulled out my Maglite flashlight and turned the dial around the bulb to high beam. Then I turned it and pointed it right at the truck. I had intended on shining my obnoxiously bright flashlight at them until they turned the headlights off or drove away. Well, they did turn their headlights off, and in turn, I turned my flashlight off. They didn't turn the motor off, though. This is creepy, and my stomach kind of churned because I thought I had pissed them off when we were up at the empty rental cabin after midnight. My husband was all the way back down at our house asleep. The truck stayed there for about a half a minute, and it finally turned its motor off, and it was gone. Yes, I swear upon everything I've ever loved, that truck just wasn't there anymore. We didn't see it fade away, didn't turn off like a light switch or television. It just wasn't there anymore. Then Deb and I both did something totally out of character for 2 old ladies. We ran to where the truck had been sitting. I couldn't say a word, but Deb, well, she just yelled over and over, "What the fuck did I just see? What the fuck did I just see?" I told her to stop screaming so I could call Jack, my husband. I was hysterical and told him to get up the hill as fast as he could. He also drove up instead of walking, and he was there in no more than 2 minutes. I told him a very short version of what happened, and he went across the street to the shale pit and pulled in as far as he could. It's all just dirt and rock. There aren't even trees there since they dig in the area. The only trees are the ones the park brings there to burn, and there wasn't any of those at that time either. He came back across the street and said there's nobody there, nothing over there except the 2 backhoes. They must have left and y'all just didn't see them. When we explained the whole thing again, and he realized they couldn't have left without us seeing them, since we were standing right in front of them. So he went back over there on foot, this time with my flashlight, since it has the high beam setting on it. Again, he came back and said there's nothing there. He said he even looked inside the cabs of the backhoes just in case. There's actually a ridge above the shale pit, but it's vertical and about 1,000 feet high. This 1 acre lot is literally just dirt and rock with nowhere to go or nowhere to hide even for a person, let alone a whole truck. We didn't take any more pictures. We went back down to the house and Jack went inside. I was outside with Deb and she said, "Kelly, there's no need to go in there and try to convince him of what we saw. It's ridiculous and you can't expect him to believe you. It'll just cause an argument. We saw what we saw, but nobody is ever going to believe us. And now we don't even believe us." There you go. What do you think? You crazy?
Yeah, just some type of phantom truck doing spooky shit, man.
Just disappearing, man. Vanished.
All right. Let's jump into my story, which is called My First Night Shift. Well, I hope this is a tale from the gas station. Okay. I've had a pretty interesting story. Please note, when this happened, I would have probably been around 19. I'm from Australia, and I used to work at a 24/7 rural petrol station in a small town called Barham.
Barham, huh?
Yeah. It's on the Murray River. And if you don't know, there are quite a lot of spooky stories around the river. If you ask any local, they will have a story to tell. Anyway, when I started the job, I was told not to mind the shadows that you may see get picked up on the security cameras, as these cameras were constantly recording. You could watch the cameras on a small TV behind the counter. My boss said that they come and go around the petrol pumps, and sometimes the lights would go out over the pumps. He said to ignore it, and if you want, you can stay in the back room until a customer walks in. When I asked why, what are they? In the most Aussie way possible, he goes, because they aren't customers. They aren't your friends. Their fuck shit happens if you acknowledge them.
I give it about a C- for that accent.
With this, I started my first graveyard shift. Lucky for me, they had put someone else on the shift with me because I was new, but that didn't prepare me for that night. It got to about 2 a.m. in the morning before things started to get weird. Every now and then the fridge lights would flicker, or the radio would go in and out of static. But what was truly unsettling was watching the figure on the cameras going back and forth just the edge where the overshed lights for the pump stopped and beyond just being pitch black road. The other worker, his name was Tony, could also see it and seemed to try to ignore it. It felt like he was trying not to seem spooked for my sake. Bless you, Tony. What was strange was that when the car headlights shone onto the road where the figure was pacing, it just vanished, confirming that it wasn't physical. When the owner of the car finished filling up and came to the counter to pay, I tried my hardest not to look like I'd just seen a ghost. But what the man said to me next just tipped me over that night. He said, "Oh, just had my first experience of a ghost car. I seen his taillights and then suddenly gone. Creepy shit out in the bush tonight."
There's some creepy shit out in the bush tonight.
There you go, that's it.
Crazy shit.
Crikey. The understatement of the year. Needless to say, I'm not ashamed to admit that I quit my job after 4 days, as I could not bring myself to work another night shift at that place, and still, to this day, I don't know how anyone could. It was a wild experience. We fast forward a few months later, and I had gone to a mate's house for a bonfire on his parents' property. We would call this a gatho. We would burn off garden waste and sit around the fire having a chat and a few drinks and maybe a joint to share. It was always very chill. It was mid-July, so it was quite a cold night. Now, this is a small town, so it's not uncommon to know everyone, especially teenagers, so it was no surprise to see Tony from the petrol station at the gatho. I knew I had to pick the guy's brain for some context of what happened that night. As soon as I sat down to chat with him, we got to talking. I remember him saying, "Well, you know, I got out of that place at right that time." I asked him, why was that? Did something happen? He then said, "One of them managed to speak. I saw this shadow pacing, but then it started to call my name." I remember at this point that poor Tony looked really uncomfortable, and I remember his eyes getting teary when he said, It sounded like my mom. She passed away when I was like 12. He struggled so hard to get that part out. It showed up every night. After that, using the same voice, asking me to come outside. I quit about 2 weeks after that you did because of that, and I still can't get that voice out of my head. It sounded like my mom, but it was way too sinister. When he said that, I felt that chill you get in your butt cheeks. That's what's best.
You don't ever get the chills in your butt cheeks, dude?
No, I don't get...
Just get the butt cheek chills.
That kind, you know. What you're being told is legit. You ever feel like that when someone tells you something? You feel it in your butt cheeks and it's true?
I was gonna say, when someone tells me solid truth, my butt cheeks just sizzle, man. I get that butt cheek tingle.
I'm gonna go back to church and I'll see Britton bearing his testimony. He's like, I knew that the church was true. I felt it in my butt cheeks.
I felt it in my butt cheeks. Just the tingle was real betwixt my cheeks.
Someone needs to investigate the bishop.
Yep. It's a little...
Anyways.
Anyway, moving on.
Even if it wasn't a paranormal encounter, whatever Tony did hear, or really... After that, a few more of us joined in on the conversation. We talked about our encounters and other things we saw in the bush. I now live in Mezgin, Bisbane. City life is completely different, but the paranormal doesn't stop. Ever since that night, I have had a huge interest in the paranormal and started to find tools for skeptical thinking. I learned pretty quick that most of the time, paranormal activities can definitely be explained, but I do have a few more stories of encounters that I've had that I cannot explain to this day. But Barham will forever be the most haunted place I have ever lived. I'm convinced that the land is haunted there. I'm going back there this winter, back to the petrol station, to see if I can capture this encounter again. If you'd like to hear more of my stories, please let me know.
Please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us get us out.
You really felt it in the butt cheek.
Yeah, that's kind of a new thing, man.
Try to keep my composure.
Don't you know?
Felt it right in the butt cheeks.
Okay. This story is called A Nautical Ghost Story from My Sailor Uncle from American Idiot TV. I was just talking to my uncle, who is a retired sailor, and he told me a story that I felt was perfect. My uncle used to work on board the Great Lakes freighter, the SS Arthur M. Anderson, and they would haul iron ore and limestone across the Great Lakes. One day, at around 7 p.m., November 2007, they were crossing Lake Superior on their way to Cleveland, Ohio, when they started receiving distress calls on their radio from an unknown vessel claiming to be the SS Edmund Fitzgerald. The SS Edmund Fitzgerald famously sank in 1975, taking all 29 crewmen with it. Well, he said, at first they all thought it was some kind of distasteful prank, until they checked the radar and found that there were no other ships around for at least 70 nautical miles, and the range on the radios are only 60 nautical miles. He said that the voice they heard from the radio described a heavy storm and high winds, and they were having a hard time holding their own. My uncle said you could hear true fear in the man's voice from over the radio, but the thing was there was no storm at all. In fact, the water was calm, and the night was clear. At around 8 o'clock, my uncle described the distress calls on the radio came to an abrupt stop, leaving the whole room in a terrifying silence. The radio stayed quiet for the rest of the night. Nobody was able to sleep that night, haunted by what they had witnessed. When it comes down to it, there is a sense of irony in this event, being as not only is the ship my uncle was on, the SS Arthur M. Anderson, the sister ship to the Edmund Fitzgerald, but it was also the last ship to make contact with the Edmund Fitzgerald in 1975 when she sank. Could my uncle and his shipmates have actually made contact with the ghosts of the crew of the Edmund Fitzgerald, or could there be another explanation to this event?
I guarantee someone was trolling him.
There's big winds. There's a big storm. This is the SS Fitzgerald.
Oh my God, we're all gonna die. It's a giant. This one is called I Actually Saw the Grim Reaper. I originally posted this in Glitch in the Matrix and was messaged it might fit here. This happened when I was just a kid of 9 or 10. It sounds like some made-up story. It really happened. This was my first time revealing it since the day it happened. I was a farm kid that grew up doing chores and helping out on the farm. If you know anything about farming, you know hay baling time is all hands in time. You were bucking bales in the field and choking in the hay loft. You were doing this in some of the hottest days of the year. After a long day of putting up bales and being covered in sweat, hay sticking to us in our mouths and noses full of hay, it was finally done. Being true country kids, when the last bale hit the hay loft, my siblings and I ran towards the pond like it was an oasis in the desert. We hit the cool water full tilt. Our pond was spring-fed by an underground river, so the water was always around 60 degrees. We were all splashing around, acting like fools. We were just enjoying getting the sweat and hay off of us. All of a sudden, to my mind, everything froze. It was as if time stopped. There was no sound. The shouts and laughter had stopped. I could move my eyes, but not my head. I glanced around as much as possible. I saw my brother doing a cannonball from the shore. He froze just as his lower half had entered the water. I could see the water bursting around him. It was frozen mid-air. I could see his happiness in his face. I could see the other brother stepping up onto the shore, the water dripping from him frozen in midair. Just beyond my brother, standing on the shore, was a robed figure holding a sickle. Beside him was an old man that looked a lot like my dad. The old man was using a walker or 2 canes. I honestly don't remember which. There was something so familiar yet different about this old man. I looked closer. The old man did resemble my dad, but it wasn't my dad. The old man was walking to the figure in the dark robe and looking at me. I have no idea what was being said because in all honesty I was freaking out in my head. Time was stopped. There were 2 figures standing on the bank of the pond, one definitely looking like the Grim Reaper, and I'm acutely aware of them. At the very instant I sensed the old man was trying to decide if he could jump into my body fast enough to escape his guardian. I also knew he decided not to try. This very next instant they disappeared and the world started again. I am freaking, asking my brothers what just happened. I explain time froze. I tell them about the 2 figures on the shore. They looked at me with that look brothers give each other when they think the other is nuts. I never mentioned this again to anyone. It is now almost 50 years later. Guess what? I look like my dad did. I also have severe neuropathy in both my legs and now should be using a cane or walker. I will let you guess who flat out refuses to use a cane or walker no matter how bad the pain is. I now know that the figure on the shore was me as an old man. I now know the Grim Reaper was reviewing my life with me. I also know for that one moment in time, young me was old me. We were aware of each other. That is why I knew what that old guy was thinking. I also know old me wouldn't want to deprive young me of my future by trying to jump into my body. I think when the time comes and current me is on that shore looking at me, I hope I am smart enough to tell myself to buy Microsoft and Amazon stock. Ha! I know most will think that this is a made-up tale. I assure you it really happened. I saw my future self standing beside the Grim Reaper, watching my younger self. Sounds made up.
All right, anyway. So that's going to wrap us up for the evening. Thank you again for joining us here in the dark, deep abyss. Huge shout out to our paid supporters of the show. We're up to 9 now with our newest paid supporter, Soylent Cleat, joined by Modelo Time, Cleat Feet, Curtis and Laura, Mothman, Laura, Devin, Conklin family, and Lou. Thank you all so much for your paid support of the show. Cleat, I don't know what you're doing, but you're getting a lot of love.
I'm the popular guy on the show.
Soylent
I don't know
Cleat,
what's up. I don't know. Where's
I guess so.
Bill Cleaton? I like that.
Like you had Bill Cleaton at one point, and then like Cleaton.
I most definitely slept with Monica Lewinsky.
So hard to see.
I mean, have you seen Hillary? Have you seen her?
Yes. But thank you all for your paid support of the show. If you do yourself want to become a paid supporter of the show, the link is down below. We also have a link if you wanted to do a one-time donation to add to the beer fund or the travel fund, either one. We'll put good use to it.
If you're listening to us on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe as it really helps us get us out there. And as always, thank you for entering the abyss.